Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar Team Building with Grace and Style. I want to make sure first you have your workbook close by. Either you've printed it out or you've got it on your favorite device to take notes onto it directly. But there are several prompts through this webinar where we'll pause and you'll go and write your answers, put your thoughts down, and then hit play again. And then we'll keep going with the webinar. How's that sound? Okay, so here we go. Team Building with Grace and Style. I hope and I bet that many of you are here because you're looking to become a stronger leader, a more compassionate, a more respectful leader. And I'm so excited to share with you some tools that are tried and true. So over my decades of work in schools, working directly in schools and coaching schools, heads of schools and leaders and teachers and families and such like that, I've got lots of experiences and stories to share with you. So today I'm sharing with you my favorite tools to use to build a team that that works, that there's kindness, there's compassion, there's fun, there's levity, and there's a connection between the people that work together to serve children. And you want to be able to do it with some grace and some style. So let's talk about some ways that you can try to do that. Okay, I want to tell you a story about glitter. Okay. When I first became a leader at a school, I was new in town. I moved to the West Coast from the East Coast, and I was a girl who loved some glitter. Yes, I did. So here's what happened. Yeah, new as a leader, I realized I don't know these people that I'm here to lead. They don't know me, so how can I help them know who I am and bring some joy and kind of set the tone and set the intention for happiness and joy. And for me at that point, it yeah, it had to do with glitter. Well, I'm here to tell you it came over just like a fur, so it did not work. Here's what happened. So I had my little pot of glitter and I decided to go around and say hi to everybody. My first mistake was that I did not consider that people were focused on their work. Mistake number one is to interrupt people when they are working and they're focused on doing the best job possible. So here I come with my little pot of glitter, and I asked people to make a wish. And I could either put glitter on their face or on their hand, however they wished. Yeah, nobody wanted to do that. I think maybe two people said, "Oh, sure, that'd be great. Yeah, it's fun." Yeah, there was one response I will never, ever, ever forget. And I, said my thing and said, "Oh, got glitter, make a wish." And she looked at me for the longest time, like this long, with this facial expression. No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So, point number one is don't bring glitter to an anti-glitter community. They weren't about it. So I learned, got it. I have to be quiet and listen and observe for a minute or two or more to see what it is that I'm walking into, that I'm joining before I begin to position myself as someone who could serve them and to lead them. It was not the glitter, not at that point anyway. So that's my story of how I really messed up right at the beginning. It got better though. So, hi, I'm Amy. I'm here to tell you all the stories, things that worked, things that didn't work. And my goal in the work that I do with Amy Williams Academy is to help educators and families learn how to be the best person possible, feeling confident and calm and certain in the way that they show up for children and families that they love that are in their community. So that's me. And here are my daughters, Abby and Millie. They certainly are inspirations for me and how to be the best person. I've had lots of practice and trying my very best day to day to show up as the best person possible for these two right here. So back to the content at hand. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm curious about your intention from this workshop today. What is it that you're hoping to get, and yeah, are you ready to leave here with a plan? So this is the first time when we're going to pause and turn to your workbook and write down some thoughts, do a little bit of reflection. Set an intention for the next little while that we're together today. Do you want to set an intention for learning new skills, or for listening and absorbing and being inspired to action, right? Well, what is it? What's your intention? And then what is it that you want after the end of our time together today? What is it that you hope to get from the content, from a goal that you'd like to set? And are you ready to leave here with a plan? Because at the very end, I'm going to ask you, what's your plan? What's your plan of action? And who are you going to tell about it to, so that they can help you and hold you accountable and ask you in a week, hey, did you do that thing that you're going to do? It's always helpful to let other people know what it is that you're working on. Trust me on that one. So go ahead and let's pause and set your intention and what it is that you want. And if you're ready to leave with a plan, when you're ready to come on back, just hit the play button and I'll be right here. Okay, now you're back and you're probably curious about what I mean by a dream team, because we're going to take a moment and describe this elusive dream team. If you had a magic wand, or you had all the tools that you need at your disposal to create and maintain and keep inspired a team of your dreams, what would that look like? What words would you use to describe this team? Would it be engaged? Would it be fun loving? Would it be happy? Would it be joyful? Would it be smart? Would it be self activated? Would it be supportive? Would it be compassionate? Would it be respectful? What are those words that you would describe for your particular program? What would you use? What would you say would be the qualities you would want on a dream team? So let's take a moment and pause again and write. What words would you use to describe your dream team in this moment in time? The dream team shifts and changes as your program shifts and changes. So this might be an exercise that you come back to in maybe a year and decide, has that shifted? Has my vision or my dream shifted, right? So go ahead and pause and write. And when you're ready, come on back. We'll be able to go back to what it is that you wrote throughout our time together today. So this part's important. So pause. And when you're ready, come on back and we'll keep going. Okay, so we're back. So you've written down some words, you've got some ideas. So let's talk about this dream team, right? So you have an idea of what it is that you want. Maybe you have a team that is already feeling pretty dreamy. You're feeling like, yeah, I got some great people who are doing the best work possible. It's feeling really good. Okay, great. And if you don't despair. It's okay. Here are some questions and some thoughts to consider and be self-reflective on what you can do as the leader, right? I learned from a leadership mentor years ago who let me know that your team is a reflection of the leader. That in that moment, that was during my glitter phase. Remember that? Right. So it was a hard question to consider. Like, how is my team a reflection of me? How do I role model what it is that I would like to see, or that I believe our program needs? Right? How does this team support the school's mission and vision? Right? Maybe I have a mission and vision for my work, which may be a little different than what is your program's mission and vision. Right? If you've taken other classes from me where we talk about mission and vision, you've probably done the work, right? Your program probably has a mission and vision. Is it on your website? Is it written somewhere where everybody can see it? Have you had that time in a staff gathering or a team gathering where you're talking about it and being clear to articulate, what do you do day to day that supports the vision and the mission of the bigger program, right? Does your dream team support this? Okay, next question is the role model piece. How do you role model it day to day? And then, how do you hire into that? Right? If some qualities on your dream team list were engaged, then maybe a question that you ask during the interview process is about how they have engaged in other programs to develop a curriculum or to develop staff connection or camaraderie. So how do you hire into whatever qualities or skills you're looking for as you're building your dream team, right? Next, how do you set the tone? This is similar to how you role model it, because our role modeling as leaders can set the tone for sure. How else can you set the tone? Considering, how do I speak to people? How do I show up for people? Is it the way that that they see as what showing up looks like? Right? Brene Brown talks about the idea of, when you're asking somebody, how can I support you? Let's consider shifting that to, what does support look like, right? So you set the tone that what you say matters, and you know what support looks like. And maybe I don't know, I might have an idea, but I want to hear from you. What does support look like to you, right? It's a little different. You see the nuances. And I'd be curious to hear what your folks would say. What does support look like? Support might be, don't say anything to me in the moment, talk to me about it after school. Or support might be, I need the tools that I need in my classroom. Can you make that happen? Support looks like, you ask me how my cat is doing when you know my cat has been sick, right? So what support looks like is going to be different for every person. So that's where we as leaders get to be creative, to consider, what does support look like for this classroom? And this classroom might be a little different. So how can I bring that to the people that I lead so that they feel supported? Now, one way that we can show support and to find out specifically what support looks like is to learn about the emotional bank account, right? And an emotional bank account is kind of like a regular bank account, where you have deposits and you have withdrawals, right? So a deposit might be that that you show up on time, that you do what you say that you're going to do, that you make sure that they have the materials that they need in their classroom to run their classroom smoothly, that they have the time that they need, right? Those are emotional bank account fillers, right? Asking about how somebody's cat is, or how's their family. They had a big family event over the weekend. How did that go? They have a birthday coming up. What are they hoping to do? What are their plans, right? Those are some emotional bank account deposits. And then emotional bank account withdrawals are maybe the absence of asking about how their cat is, or how their family event went, or showing up late is a withdrawal, or forgetting to follow up on something that you said that you were going to do. That's an emotional bank account withdrawal. So now that you understand what that means, what are emotional bank account deposits and withdrawals, what they are, it's important to remember that each program and each individual, it's going to look a little different. What deposits look like, what withdrawals look like. So some questions to consider are these. So you probably have this book in your classroom, but it's I think it's something like How Full Is Your Bucket? And it's a children's book about being kind in the classroom overall. What are bucket fillers and what are bucket emptiers, right? What fills your bucket are, how's your cat? Do you have everything that you need to do your job? How's that thing going, right? And then bucket emptiers are the withdrawals, right? So you can get that idea from that children's book of how we're talking to children about fillers and emptiers. We're really talking to children about emotional bank account deposits and withdrawals, right? Just a little bit of a difference in the nuance in the language that we use. Same concept, right? Consider this around your team. What is the currency of your team right now? Now, what do you mean by that? Okay, is your currency of your team time? Is it actual materials? Is it consideration? Is it respect? What is it that matters most to your team, right? Sometimes we can, as leaders, we kind of get into a rut and we get stuck in thinking that we know what the currency is, right? Because we know what might feel good for us and it might not be good for them, or might not be not good. I mean to say, have an impact, meaningful for them. So we might think, oh, great, we'll have pizza on Fridays once a month, or Gene Days on Wednesdays, whatever. And it could be that you miss the mark. So often, you guys, I've talked with school leaders and school teachers who have said, I don't want another pizza party. I don't want another coffee cup. I don't want another staff meeting about things that could have been put in an email, right? And we realize, oh, I thought that was the currency, but they really don't want pizza. They really want the paper and the pencils and the watercolor stand in their classroom. So we might miss the mark when we don't have that conversation and the active openness to hear what is the currency, right? And this is another thing that shifts and changes as your team shifts and changes, right? So what would be your team's currency right now? And how do you know? How did you find out? Who did you ask? What have you noticed, right? What is true and what is the story that you're making up, which sometimes fiction. There's another Brene Brown-ism for you. Okay. Next to consider, how do you give and receive recognition or appreciation? What does that look like? What do you do now? How do you let people know that you notice and you see and you appreciate, you recognize what it is that they're doing? You notice when they have a child in their classroom who's really struggling, and you notice that incredible amount of patience that that teacher has with that particular child, or the level of compassionate communication they have with that family, right? Do you notice that? Cool. Do you let them know, right? Okay, so how do you currently give and receive recognition and appreciation? Okay, next thing to remember to consider, how do you and others on your team feel seen, right? One of the most important things that we want as humans is to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed. So how do we do that for the people that we lead? One of the first steps. I had not seen or noticed my team before I showed up with my pot of glitter, right? I missed that mark because that's not how they felt seen. I had not seen or noticed and learned about them first. Okay, next. This kind of leads us to the idea of languages of appreciation. You may be familiar with the 5 love languages, you know, the different ways that we give and receive love between each other. There's a kind of variation on that theme of the language of appreciation. What does that look like? What is your language of appreciation? Mine might be different than yours, right? So let's talk about that. So before we dive into those languages of appreciation, we're going to take this one's going to be a long one, but a long pause and write. There are loads of questions in your workbook that kind of get at that. So take your time, go ahead and push the pause button now. And when you're finished with those questions and your thoughts and your reflections about that, come on back and we'll keep going. But there are a lot of questions, so take your time. It's all good. Okay, now you're back. Maybe your hand is tired. But let's talk a little bit about the difference between recognition and appreciation. It's a subtle nuance, but let's talk about it. Okay, so check it out. Most teams focus on recognition, and then they think people feel appreciated, right? Saying someone's name for perfect attendance or for this, that, and the other at a staff meeting you might think, oh, okay, well, I've recognized them, so they must feel appreciated. And sometimes that's not the case, right? So check it out. Recognition puts the emphasis on the performance, right? Verse and uses words of affirmation or tangible gifts as their methods, right? So this misses a big chunk of your employees, maybe even half, right? Or the people that you lead. So recognition tends to be more top down, and it can become routine, like shout outs that you give at the end of a staff meeting, which can be great, but not when that's the only thing you do, right? And it could be that some people really don't like that. I'm thinking of a person that I worked closely with for quite a while, and her performance was consistently stellar, right? And so we always wanted to give her recognition. Well, it turns out she did not want recognition, did not want her name called out at the staff meeting, did not want her name on a big poster in the staff lounge, did not want that, right? Good to know. Once we found out and we realized when she told us, yeah, don't do that. We realized that she didn't want us to do that because of her response in being, hooray, let's recognize Anita because she's incredible and she did this and that and the other. And her eyes got really wide. She shrunk back into her chair. Then her face went down. It was a clear indication that was non-verbally saying, stop. Now we know. Now we knew. It would have been helpful to know that ahead of time, right? So keep those conversations going with your people. All right. So recognition can be top down and often can become routine if you do it shout outs and you have to really think about who to give a shout out to. Yeah. Okay. Next, appreciation, on the other hand, different from recognition, focuses on the person. You appreciate the work that they do. How does it have an impact on the community? How does it have an impact on others that they work with, on the work and the program that you're creating together, right? Also, the people that you work with may not be performing at their peak for a variety of reasons. We can't be at our peak all the time, right? But when you express interest in them as a person, they're more motivated to become more involved, right? So think about somebody that you're working with, and they tend to, like, you look at them and go, do they really want to be here? It doesn't seem like they're really happy doing the work that they're doing. Now, the truth is that there could be many reasons behind that, right? And how helpful would it be to get to know them well enough where they feel that they can trust you and that you really are interested in them as a person, not only on their performance or their work that they do, right? That sense of connection and relationship motivates them to be more involved because they realize that they are noticed and seen and appreciated by being a part of the team, and that the work that they do is noticed by others. Now, remember, people have feelings because we're humans. So we have feelings. We also have frustrations. We also have desires, and we also have dreams. So a fun, interesting exercise to do, kind of as bonus extra credit for this webinar, is to think about the people that you lead, the people that you work most closely alongside, and what do you think they might be feeling right now? What is their inner perspective? What is their inner reality about their work and the impact that their work has on the children and on the community? What are some frustrations, right? What do they want? What are their desires? What do they hope to get from the work that they do? What impact do they hope to make? And then what are their dreams? Where do they hope to be in a year or in 5 years, right? What is their dream? And do you know that, right? Understanding that people have feelings, frustrations, desires, and dreams recognizes that you understand that they are human and that not every day Is that person going to show up at their peak, right? Next, when people feel appreciated, they want to be a part of the team. When they know that people notice and recognize and miss them when they're not there, they'll want to be more a part of the team. Okay, so let's pause this. If you haven't already paused and answered some of the questions and the thoughts from before, let's go into the different types of appreciation, right? Recognition. So let's talk about the way that people feel appreciated. So the first one is words of appreciation, right? Some people, and you may think, okay, words of appreciation are affirmations. Yeah, could be. And it's a variation on a theme in that you take those words of affirmation and make them really specific, right? So words, both written or spoken, can affirm those around us. So some prefer private communication. Remember the person I was telling you about? Loved getting a note in her mailbox, loved it, right? Don't bring her name up in a staff meeting, write her a thank you note, leave it on her desk, happy as a clam. So some prefer that private communication, and others value being praised and being noticed and recognized and appreciated in front of other people, right? They love the banner with their name on it in the staff lounge. They love a shout out at the staff meeting or at a big gathering, right? So each of us have our own way of giving and receiving appreciation, right? And oftentimes, the way that we show appreciation is the way that we recognize it and receive it ourselves, right? So it could be that if you're a words of appreciation person, that you really feel noticed and it feels good and you feel appreciated when people offer words of appreciation, those words of affirmation that are really specific to what it is that you did. Oftentimes that's the way you show appreciation to others. And what's a real bummer is if you have one way of receiving that, if that's the only way that you extend it. So one of the tools that you get from today is all the different types of appreciation, the languages of appreciation, and you can increase your agility in offering words or any of the others that we're about to get to that might be different from how you receive it. Cool. So as we describe each of them, think about, oh yeah, that's the one I really love, or that has the most impact for me, or that's how I really feel appreciated is in that particular language. So words of appreciation is the first one. Let's go on to the next one. And this one is quality time. So quality time looks like this. So it's time with those important to us. It can be encouraging, right? So what does that look like? So it could take the form of that individual time, one-on-one with the person that you lead, or hanging out with colleagues, the after school gatherings, or birthday celebrations together where people meet up and go out. But that quality time where you spend one-on-one or one in a group feels like the language of being noticed and of being appreciated. Okay, so you've got words of appreciation, you've got quality time. Let's look at the next one. So the third one is acts of service. Helping a coworker when they're facing a big deadline, or they've got big work that they need to do, they need some help. That can be extremely encouraging to someone who is an acts of service person, right? So it could be that you notice that their classroom seems really busy, but you notice the garbage needs to be taken out. So you just go in, take the garbage out, put in a new liner. That's an act of service that to some people feels like, oh, thank you. You noticed, you appreciated the hard work that I'm doing over here. And you also noticed my garbage was overflowing. So thank you for that, right? So that's a different kind of language, right? Now, you may notice that these different languages, if you will, have to do with each other in the workforce, but it also can be applied in our relationships outside of our school and outside of our work. in a little bit of a different way, but in a lot of similar ways, right? So it could be, for example, my own husband is an acts of service person. That's his language. So the way that I feel appreciated and noticed by him is when he does small things like make dinner or fills the car up with gas, those kinds of things. So I learned the way that I can show him appreciation and love and recognition is to commit acts of service for him, right? Some things I don't want to do. I don't want to empty the dishwasher, but as an act of service, I can do it, right? Okay, so as we're going through, we can notice the people around us and the team that we lead. We can begin to observe and notice how are they extending appreciation to others. That could give us a clue as to what their language is, right? Or you could just straight up ask them which they prefer. That's always pretty, it's nice and clear. And it gives people an opportunity to share that too. Okay, the next one, tangible gifts, right? I love this one because I love a good present. But think about, and I love to give presents. I love to give a really like, ooh, they're going to love this candle, right? And then I get that candle for them, or they're going to love these whatever cookies and you get this. Anyway, so if your language is tangible gifts, it looks like this. You may show your colleagues that you're getting to know them and demonstrate that through little presents, little gifts related to what it is that they're interested in or what their preferences are. So if you know somebody loves cats, then maybe some stickers of cats or a poem about cats or a t-shirt that has a cat on it, something like that. So when you can know them well enough to know what their preferences are and what their interests are, and then give gifts that are related to that, bingo, right? Do you give chocolate to somebody who really doesn't like chocolate? They would much prefer, a bag of Skittles. It's helpful to know, right? Because who wants to get chocolate if you really want Skittles, or vice versa? Right. So you got to ask, find out what are their preferences? What are their interests? Now, the next one, the next language is the language of physical touch. So appropriate physical touch in the workplace usually look like it happens during some sort of spontaneous celebration, right? So it might be a high five, it might be a fist bump or a congratulatory handshake. Physical touch always comes with it the importance of consent. So it's important to ask first, can I give you a high five or can I get a high five? Or you can put your fist up there for a fist bump. They can either enthusiastically meet you with that or firm and clear not. So consent is a really important piece of this. So you're looking for and respecting their enthusiastic yes or their clear firm no, right? So physical touch is another language that we have to extend appreciation and recognition, right? Okay. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. And this is a tool that I can't recommend highly enough, but it's a tool called rounding. I wish I made it up, but I didn't. I want to give credit where credit is due to Quint Studer, who wrote a book, Service Excellence. So I recommend that, and I believe I put a link to that in your workbook. But in that book, he talks about how to have conversations and how to do a consistent conversation with people that asks the same questions each time so that people can be ready for them and know what to expect and be prepared for them, right? But these key questions during a rounding include these 5 that are super important to ask every single time, right? So the first question sets the tone and gets the vibe in the same direction and in the positive direction. Like, what is going well, not what's not going well yet, but first, what is going well? What's going well? And when you hear from that person what's going well, it gives you the information of, Okay, that's going well. Don't change that. If you're hearing this is going well from several people, that's powerful golden information. What's going well? Next, the next question to ask during rounding is, do you have what you need to do your best work? Once upon a time, I rounded with someone, Sandy, in a classroom. And this was years ago, and it was just before the beginning of school. And I was rounding what's going well. She gave me an answer. Next question, do you have what you need to do your best work? And she said, the paper cutter. The paper cutter is so dull. We're ruining paper left and right because it's not cutting, it's just ruining the paper. So it just needs to be sharpened. I don't know the last time it's been sharpened. Good to know. Wrote it down. Sharpen paper cutter. It took me 30 minutes to take that paper cutter to a place that did sharpening, cost $10 to get it sharpened. And I brought it back. It was as if I had given her a piece of gold or something. She was so happy. And it was something that I considered to be so small, but to her, it made such a huge difference in the work that she did and her dedication to not ruining all that paper, right? Okay, so there's a story there. Next, the third question is, do you have any ideas for improvement? Right? Are there places where we can shore up or do something a little different or do something better? Do you have some ideas? Often the people that you're rounding with have a perspective that you don't have, right? So if you're a school leader, you may not be in the classroom. You might be, but you may not be in the role of the person who you're rounding with, right? So they have a perspective that you don't have. So it's really helpful to hear, is there a way that we could be doing this better? Maybe you have something really specific that you want to ask about. Like, do you have any ideas for improving the drop off routine or the pickup routine? Do you have any ideas for improvement around the nap room or the transition from indoors to outdoors, something like that? You might have something specific that you want to gather information and ideas and perspectives from lots of people about how to make a particular something better, right? Or you can straight up ask the question, ideas for improvement, and leave it open-ended. Okay, the next question is there anything I can do to better support your work, right? And what would that support look like? Key question. So finding out, what would support look like and how can I do that more? The next question is, who deserves some sort of appreciation, some sort of recognition, right? So this is the place, the area of gratitude. And I believe from the feedback that I've gotten over hundreds of rounding meetings that I've had, is this is such a key piece of rounding, is the opportunity to say, Chloe has been working with this particular child and it's really hard. And Chloe is consistently patient and so kind and it works so well. So I just want to give Chloe a shout out for that, right? So in that moment, as you're rounding, you just happen to have some note cards right there beside you, right? And I say note cards because I encourage you to actually, for real, with a pen and paper, write a thank you note. That sounds old school because I know you might be thinking, well, I'll just send a quick email or quick text. Okay, that's one way to do it. But the power of the written word put in the real old fashioned mail with a stamp and arriving at their home, I'm telling you, it packs such a powerful punch, if you will, right? A woman that who was a person who regularly received a shout out from roundings again and again and again. It was the same person. It's like, oh, I'm going to write Marissa another thank you note because her work was so impactful all around. And it turns out, she told me, Amy, I thank you. I got your thank you card. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Did you know when I come home, my father, she lived with her family, they all lived together. My father meets me at the door with the letter because he knows what it is now. A letter from the school. Like, you got one. And the celebration that happens when she opens that thank you note, reads it, everybody wants to hear it, and it goes on the refrigerator, right? There's a grown woman who puts this on her refrigerator, and she had all of her thank you notes from me and others at the school who would write her thank you notes. Powerful. So I recommend with a real note card and a real stamp and real pen and paper. That's my recommendation. Okay. So these are the key questions for rounding, right? Now, there are some more that you can do, some more questions that you can ask that are really specific. So here they are. So there may be a person that you want to round with, and they show up and perform at a high level, right? So they're consistent, they're kind, they're respectful, and you think to yourself, dream team, I want them all the time. I want more of them, more people who share those kinds of skills and that kind of talent, and that kind of energy and enthusiasm for their work. Okay, so we want to re-recruit them. We don't want them to come into our office and say, "Hey, Amy, can I have a quick conversation?" And they shut the door, and you know what that means. Oh boy, and they resign. That can be really heartbreaking. I've been there before. Now, if you can re-recruit them, you might find out information that might keep them in your program and at your school. Life happens. Different people need different things. Their careers change, their family situations change. They may move. There may be lots of reasons for someone to move to another school or to move out of your program, right? And there are also times where we have people who we work with and we want to keep them forever, and they leave. And then we find out afterwards or at the end that we could have done something to prevent that. And what a drag that is. So this is a question that you can ask during rounding to find out, right? So this question is, what keeps you here and what would lure you away? It's a real vulnerable question to ask as a leader, because you got to be ready for the answer, right? So what keeps you here and what would lure you away? So you might find out what keeps them here is the children, or relationship with their colleagues, or proximity to their house, whatever. And then the answer to what would lure you away. That helps define what plans can I make in the upcoming few weeks or months to keep this person, because they may get it at another school or another program or another job. You may hear that greater pay would lure them away, or proximity to their home, or benefits, or whatever it is. So have the courage to ask the vulnerable question, what would lure you away? And then to re-inspire. Now, the re-inspire question are for the people on your team who are, they're doing fine. They're showing up and they're doing their job. They're doing fine. But you don't find yourself going, "Oh, that's great. Things are going really well." So when you find yourself describing their work like, "Oh, yeah, it's okay," those are folks where you might want to consider re-inspiring them, right? So it's okay. And then sometimes the folks that you wish, what would inspire them? They don't seem happy. They don't seem joyful or excited about being here. Those are the people that you can ask this re-inspiration question. And that question is this: what would make your job more inspiring, or more fulfilling, or more joy-giving? And then be quiet. Just shut up and listen. What is the answer? Based on that answer, you can begin to make plans, or it can inform what steps you take next, right? And you can enter into a conversation with that person about finding more inspiration or more joy or more fulfillment in their work. Okay, so now's the time to pause and go round with somebody. So take a minute. If you have to come back to this tomorrow, it's okay. But this piece is so important. It's super important to actually go through the process of rounding. Let them know, hey, I'm taking this webinar and I'm supposed to round with somebody. Here's what rounding is. And do you have about 5 or 10 minutes? Rounding can take about 10 minutes and it could take 30 minutes, right? Depending on how much information and how the conversation goes, right? So some tips from me about rounding are this. I recommend getting into the habit of this, letting your team know what rounding is and what they can expect ahead of time, so that when you say, hey, Abby, can we round this afternoon? Or can I come sit with you in the nap room and round together? Or can we meet up at, while you're on the playground or whatever and round? Can we do that today? They're prepared and they're ready. It's like, oh yeah, Amy's going to ask me what's going well, ideas for improvement, recognition, all of that. So they can be prepared. I remember rounding with someone and we were going to meet just right after school. And she came with a notepad and she had all of her answers. It was so great. And she said, I could just tear this off and give it to you, which was true, but it was really helpful to have the conversation right there. And she had her thoughts right there. So that's an idea. But to give yourself a goal to round with at least one person every week, right? So perhaps you put a calendar reminder on Thursday morning so that you can get it done by Friday, whatever works for you, so that you can help yourself create some sort of method to keep consistent and rounding. Now, for fun, you can add into the loop of rounding, not just your colleagues that you lead, or the staff members, teachers, assistant teachers, support staff on your team, but you can include family members as well. Like, oh, I can round with a family. What's going well? Ideas for improvement. Imagine the really important information that you can get from there. It's different from a survey, right? It's a quick conversation. Another fun idea, if you have older children in your program, is to round with children. Imagine that. I rounded with a handful of children when we were trying to figure out new ways to, zhuzh up to improve our playground space. And the answers that I got were really precious. The answers to who deserves some sort of appreciation, precious, right? And I wrote thank you notes for that. It. So think about who you can round with. It doesn't have to be only the people that you lead, but you can include other people in your community as well. You could round with community business partners, right? If you've got a housekeeping service, or if you get regular donations from a garden center, you can round with them as well. Round with community organizations that you connect with, maybe your licensor, or special services that come in, an OT or speech therapist, right? But what I want to really underline and put an exclamation point on is that you do it regularly, like at least once every week with somebody. Okay, so check that out. So go ahead and pause if you haven't done it already. Go around with somebody and come back when you're ready, when you're finished. Okay, now we're back. We're going to shift gears just a little bit. So we've rounded with somebody, you've got some ideas, you've written your thank you note, you put a stamp on it, you put it in the mail, right? Okay. Okay. So here's the next part of some team building, right? So it's coaching, building, developing. Those words kind of come to mind when we're thinking about school leadership. Of course, my role is as a coach. Of course, my role and a responsibility is to help build, right? Yes, it is something that I do for my team. As part of my job is to develop the people that I work alongside. So how that unfolds is going to be individual to every person, right? I'd like to share with you some key ideas to keep in mind as you develop your coaching relationship, how you show up as a coach, right? So you're going to have your own individual style, right? Your individual connection and relationship with the people that you lead, for sure. So when you're in a coaching conversation or coaching relationship, coaching experience, here's some three things to keep in mind so that you strengthen your coaching practice, right? So the three C's are this: connect, communicate, and collaborate. So, sometimes it's easy to think in, if I could just remember three C's, what are those three C's? Stand for? They stand for connect. And what is the other one? Communicate and collaborate. Let's break those down and see how they can show up in the work that you do. Okay, so the first one, connect. Remember, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be noticed, right? So in the time that you create to make connections with people, you're supporting that first C in your coaching relationship, right? So we want to build that relationship by asking, what is working? Sound like rounding? Yes. When you're giving feedback and you're thinking of building that relationship, you're noticing. So maybe you've observed in a classroom and you're giving feedback afterwards. You're coaching around what it is that you saw, right? Perhaps you had an intention going into the into the observation about, hey, Amy, can you come observe this particular child during this particular transition? Yes, I'll do that. So you're going in and you're observing with a particular intention in mind. Okay. So afterwards, when you give feedback from your observation, this coaching feedback is building a relationship, asking follow-up questions, and giving some time for self-reflection. So if we break those down, you can share what it is that you saw was working, right? Let me back up a little bit. I recommend asking first that person, well, what is working from your perspective? Hear that. And then maybe you could say what I noticed, and then you say what you notice. Okay. Give a 10-second story of something really specific that you saw. I noticed that interaction with that child when they spilled the seeds on the floor. I noticed that you seemed so patient and asked the child, oops, we had a spill. Do you know where the dustpan is? Right? You didn't do it for them, but you made sure that they knew how to get what they needed to clean up the seeds, right? Give that 10-second story of something specific that you saw that worked. So helpful. Another question to build that relationship is to ask what is on their mind. What is it that you noticed, right? What's on top of mind for you right now? So if you enter into a coaching conversation, you may not have a specific intention, specific, what's the word? Focus. So to ask, what's on your mind? What did you notice, right? So asking for their thoughts and their perspective is really helpful. And that helps build a relationship because they're being listened to and are heard and seen and noticed. Now, the next piece is about asking follow-up questions, right? So it could be, hey, you've had a coaching conversation before and you're doing a follow-up. So the question, well, hey, what did you figure out about that transition to nap? Or what did you figure out from that family? You were going to ask the family how nap time went at home. What did you figure out about? So remembering to follow up is very validating, right? Amy remembered that I was really struggling with that thing and she checked in with me on that. That can be really powerful and builds the connection. Now, the next piece under connection is to remember to give time for self-reflection. This has to do with processing information, right? So we know how to do this with children, where we say something or we ask a question or offer a direction or instruction, and we give the child some time to process what it is that we said, what does it mean, What are they going to do? Do I know how to do it? And then executing, doing the thing, right? Very similar with adults. So giving that time for self-reflection. So the power of that pause, that engaged pause, where we're quiet. We might ask the question, or they might ask us a question. So we pause. Let's think about that. Internally, you might be having lots of ideas like, okay, if we just did this and this and this, all will be well. And when we do that, we rob that person that we're coaching we're robbing them of the opportunity to figure it out for themselves and to come up with their own idea that they have ownership of, and they don't grow dependent on us telling them what to do. That can be tricky when we feel like we know what to do and we want them to just do what we tell them to do. Has anybody ever been like that? Yeah, me. Okay. So the art of connecting in a way that encourages them coming up with their own independent answers, perspectives that maybe we don't know about. That's where real deep growth happens, right? I wonder what would happen if is another phrase that's really good to follow up. Let's think about that. Wonder what would happen if, those pauses where you're engaged, but you're giving that silence to process and that other person to come up and share. Okay, the next C is communicate. So look, we were already touching on this one. So communicate is how you are in communication, of course. So what if we came at it from a place of curiosity and wondering, right? Like, I wonder what would happen if, right? Be curious about what it is that you see, right? Communicate what you see, communicate what you're curious about. I notice, and then say what you noticed. I noticed that when that child spilled the seeds, I noticed you had such patience and asked if they made sure that they knew where the sweeper was, right? So that 10-second story goes along with this one too, right? Another phrase that encourages that communication is tell me more about whatever it is that you're talking about. Okay, so the child is really struggling and they're throwing the seeds around the room. Okay. Tell me more about drop off. Tell me more about nap. Tell me more about their involvement in gatherings, right? So you're gathering information, but you're pulling that information from them because they know, right? Often in a coaching relationship, when the school leader is coming in a coaching relationship, it's important to hear what is your perspective, what's your what angle do you see it from, because it's probably a different one than how you see it. Now the last C is collaborate, right? So this is where you can come together and collaborate on, okay, so here's what we've noticed, here's what we're curious about, here's what we want to happen. Okay, how can we set a goal to work toward making this happen, right? So we can use SMART as a way to create goals that are pretty clear, right? Pretty clear, and it makes sense to what it is that you're trying to do. So SMART stands for this. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, right? So if you can get a SMART goal written well, oh, it's a thing of beauty. Love writing SMART goals. Yeah, I do. So when you collaborate on creating this goal together, you can figure out together from your experience, from their experience, how together that child can be better served or that situation can be better managed. Okay. So for example, it might be that you want to increase conversations about the different makeups of different families, right? So that could be really specific. I want to increase children's understanding of that families are made up in all sorts of different ways. Cool. That's specific. Now let's measure it. So to that end, I'm going to go to the library and choose 5 books to add to my book rotation that are about different kinds of families. So that's real specific. I'm going to, and here's where we can measure. By next Tuesday, this is the time-based part, I'll get to the library to choose 5 books about different kind of family makeups, right? So that's specific, it's measurable. So you're gonna get 5, right? Is it attainable? Does giving yourself a week, is that something that you can get done in a week? Yes, no? You want to get to the yes part, like, yeah, that's attainable. I can do that. Next, is it relevant? Will having more books available that you read and share with children reach the goal of your initial intent, your initial intended goal, right? Is it, so that makes it relevant? Yes, carry on. And then the time-based piece, you just put a date on it. By Thursday, August 17th, I will get 5 books on a variety of different family makeups to put in our classroom library shelf, of which I will read 1 at every gathering for the next week, right? So that's really specific. It's measurable. You can measure it. Did I do it? Did I not do it? Is it attainable? Is it something that I reasonably can do? Yes, cool. And is it relevant? Does it have impact on what it is that your main goal is in the first place? And is there a deadline? Can you do the thing by the date that you said that you could do it? With SMART goals, you're able to really look at, did my plan support the goal? Or I still need to do something else. So you either adjust your SMART goal to be more specific, measurable in a different way, time-based in a different way, right? So that you can achieve the main goal, you see? So that's one rough example. I invite you to do one right now. So think about something that you would like to accomplish, right? And let's write a SMART goal about it right now. So write a goal that is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So in your workbook, you've got some space to do that. Okay, so go ahead and do that, but go ahead and push pause and come back when you've got your SMART goal written. I'll be right here. Okay, now the next piece to talk about is the build, right? So how do we do that? So here are some questions to consider. Where do you feel the need to build your team? Is there a place where you think, if only this, we need more training on such and such, right? Is it around connection between families and the teachers? Is it between teachers and children? Is it about children and families? What about teamwork? Is that a place where your team could use some building? What about common goals, right? Oftentimes, you can figure, as a school leader, you know what the bigger goals are for your program, right? We want to, end the fiscal year in the black. We want to increase the number of employees we have on the on-call list, right? What are the goals that the bigger program of your school have? Great, cool, you got those. Next, from your team, can their goals support the larger school goals, not larger, overarching school goals, right? So maybe folks might have a goal to talk to 3 different people who might be interested in an on-call position, for example, right? How can their SMART goals support the overarching school or program goals? That's one way to consider building the team, their investment in being a part of goals that are program wide. Maybe you have a need or you see a need in your team that you want to build in engagement, right? Do you notice folks are just kind of coming in, doing their job, leaving, right? And that might be just fine. Is there a way that you would like to see more engagement, more opportunity for them to give their perspective and their opinion and their voices and their ideas, right? A tip to remember around building is how you address it depends on the necessary area of growth. So it could be that the way that you address it is through a specific professional development or some written material or coaching or outside services to come in and assist. So it depends on the area that you see, we need to grow in this area. Okay, let's talk about develop. Okay. So once you know your team well, here's some more questions for you. How fun would it be to know what the talents and the passions of the people on your team have? Is there somebody on your team who's a really incredible gardener and who's really passionate about that? Is there a way that their talent and that passion for gardening and for earth and for all things that grow, is there a place for that passion and that talent to improve and support and be a catalyst for your program? How awesome would that be? I'm thinking of a woman that I knew that I worked with who was a knitter, and it turned out she was passionate about it. She was really good at it. And she became the go-to person that our children who wanted to learn how to knit, they would go get a lesson from Miss Vera. So she would teach them how to cast on, how to knit, how to cast off. And so many scarves were made because she had the talent and the passion to teach children about that. And so she was happy, children were happy, families were happy. I was happy when I got a new scarf, right? Okay, one example. Another way to consider and think about developing is, what do you contribute? What can you contribute to the development of your team? So it could be that you tap back into your coaching relationship. And do you contribute in offering opportunities for them to learn and grow? Do you contribute to them feeling engaged and that they have a voice, right, through rounding? Do you contribute in, think about the languages of appreciation, acts of service, quality time, right? Next, to develop, how can it be expressed in the classroom, right? So as you're thinking about places and ways that the team that you lead want to be supported, what that support looks like, how can that impact the work that's done in the classroom directly with the children and by extension to the families? Does that support larger school goals? We talked a little bit about how individual goals can support the overarching school goals, right? Now, all of this fosters a retention of your best. People who feel like they're heard and they're listened to and that their ideas get given a go and you give it a try, right? Those people feel engaged and they feel connected and less apt to leave, right? It also fosters a growth mindset school-wide, that we're here to grow and learn and try things in a way that might be a little different, and then try something this way that might be a little different here. So it fosters that growth mindset instead of fixed mindset. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way we have to do it, versus let's try it. This might work differently or better, or might address a need that what didn't exist before, right? Now if you want to pause and write down some thoughts and questions to that, I highly recommend that, right? So if you want to pause, I would recommend that. So go ahead and pause, write the answers to this, and come on back when you're ready. Okay, now if you're back, Here are my top 5. Over many years of coaching school leaders and teachers, teaching teams, here are the top 5 things that I hear that can make building a team with grace and style be a real struggle, right? These are 5 that I hear most frequently. So let's talk about them. So number 1 is, and they're in no particular order. So number 1 is, but what can I do if I'm not a leader? I'm a brand new leader. I've never done this before. I've been their teacher and their colleague, and now I'm moving into a place of leadership. And oh my gosh, everybody hates me now, right? Or somebody had to do it, so I stepped in as a leader. I really don't want to be head teacher, but I'm the only one that has head teacher qualification. So now I got to do it. And what now? I have to talk to parents, right? So what can I do if I'm not a leader and I'm moving into a leadership position? So that's a top question. So how do you build that team when maybe you yourself might not be feeling like a leader, right? Who on your team is someone you can connect and collaborate with, right? What are the questions that I can ask my team to become a better leader? Can learn so much through that active rounding, 100%. Another one of the top 5 is, oh my gosh, there's so much gossip. What about the gossip? That's a tough one, right? That one is mentionable is manageable. I'm thinking of my Mr. Rogers class and how Fred Rogers talks about what is mentionable is manageable, right? So if there is some sort of gossip in your team, or talking over here, click stuff that happens, that could be so difficult and so such a struggle for sure. So what is mentionable is manageable. When that gossip comes up, one, I recommend do not triangulate, right? So when this person comes to talk to me about this person, I say, have you talked to that person? First, talk to that person first, and then we can come back. Maybe let's invite that person and let's all talk together. What are your non-negotiables around talking about others with the intention of, is it mean? Is it rude? Is it bully? There's more and more and more that can be said about that. So in just a second, I'm going to give you a resource that can help address that and the others, right? Okay, but let's move on to the third one. Third was, I don't feel supported now. I'm feeling alone. I don't get everything that I need to be able to do my job well. How can I affect change if I don't have the tools that I need, right? So that could be a difficult one too. How can I affect change when I'm not feeling supported, right? So with that comes some encouragement and recommendation to do self-reflection first, right? So the overused idea of, you putting the oxygen mask on first before you help others put their oxygen mask on is really relevant, right? How can you articulate what does support look like, right? You don't have to wait for somebody to ask you, what does support look like? You can let others know what it looks like. Make that request, right? That makes me think of a little bit of a NVC, nonviolent communication, feelings, needs, and requests. Like what am I feeling about the situation? What do I need in this situation? And what's my request in this situation, right? Okay. So next, the fourth one is, where is the best place to start? I don't even know where to start. My recommendation, start with rounding. Start right up close to rounding in building that emotional, or filling up that emotional bank account with your people, with the folks that you work alongside. And the fifth one here, what if someone vents to me instead of going to that person directly? So there you go. There's that triangle. So giving that option, have you talked to that person first? As soon as you talk to that person, let's come back, right? Oftentimes They just want to vent. So I've heard some leaders who say that the way that they address this is by asking, do you want do you want a solution, or do you just want to vent? So you could find out, is this right here, right now? And do you just need to say it to get off your chest? Or are you interested in solutions, right? So as a leader, when you show up and maybe you try that method, you can hear, does that person just want to vent? And is there that an opportunity to coach and share where is the most appropriate place and how to do that? Assisting someone to move from venting to solution, right? That can take several times, several conversations. Now, to all of those questions and to others, this is my, I think this is the final tool for you in this webinar. Don Miguel Ruiz wrote a book, The Four Agreements, and I can't recommend it enough, right? And in the book, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about the main four agreements. And if you have these four agreements, your community can feel more cohesive, more respectful, more kind and considerate of each other. So the first of the four agreements is this: be impeccable with your word. So if you say you're going to do something, you got to do the thing, right? There's so much more that can be said about be impeccable with your word. Well, and all of these, actually. So if you'd like to pause right now, right, and go to your workbook, there are plenty of links, and we couldn't listen to them here because of copyright, of course. So I'd like for you to go ahead and take a pause now and go and listen to Don Miguel Ruiz talk about each of these four agreements more in depth, right? So in him speaking about being impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Boy, that's a big one. And I believe the most important is always do your best. Those are powerful. When you can have these four agreements be something that you and your team together agree that you're going to agree on, does that make sense? Then so much good work can happen. All right, so take a moment or take a little bit, because each of the interviews where he's talking about each of these are about 7 or 8, maybe 10 minutes long. So go do that. And after you've listened to those, come on back and we'll finish our time together. Okay, deep breath. Now we're at the end of this webinar. You've had lots of reflective questions that you've answered. Your workbook is probably full. Your head and your heart are probably full with new inspiration, listening to Don Miguel Ruiz speak about the four agreements. Lots of food for thought, eh? So now's the time. What's your plan? What's your one thing that you plan to do in the coming weeks? Now, full permission. You don't have to do all the things that we talked about today tomorrow, okay? But you can make one change. What would that one change do? And often that one change can change your direction, and in the long run, change your trajectory. So think about one thing. Permission not to do it all, but permission to choose one thing that you plan to do. And who are you going to tell about it? Who can say, hey, did you do that thing? So helpful to have your friends, your colleagues help you out here. Okay, so pause, write it down, and come on back when you're ready. Okay, lastly, I wanted to share with you a reminder that I've got social story books for you. I call them Sosimo books, how to do things. The first one is, wow, that's a big emotion, helping children understand how to regulate when those big emotions come over. The next one, hey friend, want to play? That's sometimes our children have forgotten how to ask each other how to play, especially when we were first coming out from under the pandemic. This is a social story that I told over and over and over again and decided to make it into a book. So this is about how to ask a friend to play. What if they say no? What if they say yes? Right. And then that kind of flows into the idea about consent. When they say no, when they say yes, what does it sound like? What if you're disappointed, right? What is consent anyway? When do you ask consent, right? So consent, what is that anyway, is another one for you. And the most recent publication is Rude, Mean, and Bully. What is that? And that's the star of that show is the upstander. So in the book, Rude, Mean, Bully, what is that? It talks about the difference between rude and mean and bullying. Talks a little bit about the role of a bystander. What is a bystander? And then what is an upstander? Someone who stands up, maybe even if their voice is shaky too. What is the role of an upstander? How can we all be upstanders more and more and more? So, if you're interested in these books, go to my website. There's a button that says books, or you can reach out to me. I can get an author copy available to you. Happy to do that at any time. So, here's a way to get a hold of me if you need me. You know how to Facebook and Instagram at Amy Williams Academy. Email amywilliamsacademy@gmail.com and my website, amywilliamsacademy.com. I want to thank you so much for carving out time for your professional development here. And I'll see you again soon.